ka kasama sa aming kandungan, at ipikit ang iyong mga mata dahil malayo pa ang ating lalakbayin. Ituwid mo ang iyong pagal na katawan, matulog ng mahimbing, ang pagod ay pauwiin. Humimlay ka kasama at ang diwa mo'y paliparin sa ulap ng mga bituin, o di kaya'y pasisirin sa karagatang malalim. Ngunit hayaan kami ang umugit sa iyong mga panaginip. Humimlay ka kasama
sa pagyao ni kasamang Jose Maria Sison,
kandungan,
nagtitipon tayo hindi lamang upang
at ipikit
maglusa,
ang iyong mga
kundi
mata
upang magpugay.
dahil malayo pa ang ating lalakbayin.
Sa pinakadakilang organisador,
Ituwid
guro
mo
at tanglaw ng mga
ang
uring anak
iyong pagal
pawis
na katawan,
at nakikibakang sambayanan.
matulog ng
Tayong lahat
mahimbing,
na nakikipaglaban
pagod
para sa pambansang
ay
kalayaan at
pauwi.
demokrasya.
Humimlay ka kasama at ang diwa mo'y paliparin sa ulap ng mga bituin, o di kaya'y pasisirin sa karagatang malalim.
Sa para sa sosialismo,
Ngunit hayaan kami
pagsasamantala ng tao sa tao
ang
at
umugit sa iyong
sambayanan
mga
ng
panaginip.
para kay Jose Maria Sison.
Humimlay ka kasama at ang diwa mo'y paliparin sa ulap ng mga bituin, o di kaya'y pasisirin sa karagatang malalim. Ngunit hayaan kami ang umugit sa iyong mga panaginip.
Mabuhay ang pambansa demokratikong revolusyon! Mabuhay ang sambayanang Pilipino! Kung bakit ko naaalala si Ka Joma habang nanonood ng K-drama. Tulad ng marami, ako'y nakumaling na rin sa panonood ng K-drama. Sunod-sunod bawat episode hanggang sa magwakas ang seryeng palabas. Ngunit ewan ko ba kung bakit minsan kapag may linyang binibigkas ang tauhan, ang naaalala ay dilit iba kundi siya, ang dakilang si Ka Joma. Sa Crash Landing on You halimbawa, kung saan hindi halimaw ang mga nasa sosyalistang bansa, kundi tao din lamang. At sa Dongya, nang sinabi ng bida na ang mga alipin ay itinulak sa hangganan kung kaya't nag-aklas. O sa When Our Love Blooms, dumaan man ang mga dekada, ay hindi bumitiw ang aktivistang pianista sa ipinaglalaban ng mga manggagawa. Katatapos ko lang ng bridal mask, at habang tinotorture ang minor character, malapit mang matigok ay sukat pang nangahas magsalita na ang tunay na terorista ay ang mga magnanakaw sa bayan. At dito, sa capital scandal na ngayoy sinusundan, ganito ang usapan. Tanong, bakit ka pa nagbabasa ng tungkol sa sosyalismo at kasarinlan? Ako, ang gusto ko lang ay ipagtanggol ang aking mga minamahal. Sagot, yan mismo. Ganyan ang sosyalismo. Ganyan ang pakikipaglaban para sa kasarinlan. Natutunan namin sa iyo ang maghangad na maging tulad ni Attorney Wu. Anuman ang kapansanan at pagkukulang, ay nagsisikap pa ring mag-ambag tungo sa pagkamit ng katarungan. Maaalala ka, lagit-lagi, lalo namin na iyong mga tagahanga at tagahanga ng K-drama. Sa K-drama, naaalala ang batang ako na nagbabasa, pinag-aaralan ng mga akda ni Ka Joma na nooy ipinagbabawal kung kaya't hindi na ilalabas sa aklatan. Yumao ka man, Tito Joe, aming Ka Joma, ay hindi lilisan ng iyong pamana. Maaalala ka sa bawat marcha, sa bawat labanan, sa bawat sandali ng patuloy na paglilingkod sa masa. Mananatili kang tanglaw ng aming pakikibaka. Ako po si Joy Barrios, na nasulat ang tulang ito sa tulong ni Bibeth Ortesa.
Welcome to everyone to today's program, the book launch for two books. The Filipino People's Democratic Revolution is Invincible, an anthology of Ka Joma's selected writings from 2022, and Ka Joma Lives, Tributes and Condolences, a compilation of messages from individuals, organizations, alliances, and parties around the world who honored Ka Joma in different ways. My name is Leah, and I'll be your MC for today's book launch. Magandang hapon to everyone who's joining us live today, and to everyone who's in our Zoom, good morning, good afternoon, or good night. And we thank you for joining us at whatever time it is for you. I know already there are people here from New Zealand, from Canada, from the Norwegian Embassy, from the US, so thanks to everyone who is listening in today. The opening cultural performance that you watched before the start of this program was from Joy Barrios from the US. Thank you so much for that contribution. If you have joined us for a book launch before, you may be familiar with our format, but this book launch does have a different tone and significance. For one thing, it is our first book launch of 2023, but more importantly, it is our first book launch since Ka Joma passed on December 16th of last year. In his solidarity greeting to the concerned students for justice and peace in Metro Manila, he agreed that 2022 was a challenging year for human rights defenders and advocates for just peace. The end of 2022 was made that much harder for all of us when he left, but we must heed his final message and adhere to his lifelong struggle. As his lifelong partner, comrade, editor, and fellow revolutionary Julie de Lima said in the preface to his last and final message on the 54th anniversary of the Communist Party of the Philippines. Some 15 or so minutes before Joma took his last breath, he was still talking about ensuring the revolution would win victory and advancing to socialism. With his last thoughts, he remained optimistic about the Filipino people whom he served with utmost determination. The best way we can honor Ka Joma and his legacy is to continue the Filipino people's democratic revolution towards its inevitable victory. The Filipino people's democratic revolution is invincible. Please join me in a chant. Ka Joma lives! Ka Joma lives! Ka Joma lives! To kick off our program, we present a recorded video of opening remarks from the Secretary General of Bayan, or Bagong Aliansang Makabayan, Renato Reyes Jr. Nato was the founding chair of Anakbayan in 1998 and the National Secretary General of the League of Filipino Students from 1997 to 1999. He has been with Bayan since 2001.
Good day and warm greetings of solidarity to our comrades and friends. We are gathered here today for the launching of two important books that highlight the revolutionary legacy of Professor Jose Maria Sison, whom we fondly knew as Joe, Ka Joma, or JMS. It has been 50 days since the passing of one of the most important figures of the world proletarian revolution in the current era. We are also just 4 days away from his 84th birth anniversary. His absence is deeply felt by the working class all over the world, who have looked to him for inspiration and guidance in waging their respective struggles for national and social liberation. The passing of JMS last December 16 in Utrecht led to an outpouring of grief and solidarity throughout various social movements, most especially among his compatriots. In Manila, more than 2,000 people attended a public tribute held on December 28, 2022. Meanwhile, revolutionary forces in the countryside rendered a gun salute for the founder of the Communist Party of the Philippines. So many were the tributes and messages of condolences and solidarity that these have been compiled in a book entitled Ka Joma Lives, and it will be launched today. I'd like to share with you an update related to the passing of Ka Joma. While we were holding our tributes for JMS, many of our online pages were subjected to censorship by social media giant Facebook. Multiple personal and organizational accounts that posted messages of condolences and tribute videos were suspended and restricted. In the worst of these acts of censorship, Facebook pages of Anak Bayan, Bayan, and KMU with close to 200,000 combined followers were taken down in January. Some activists also had their personal accounts deleted or locked. The online censorship is due to Facebook's policy against so-called dangerous individuals and organizations, a list supplied to it by the US State Department, which of course includes Ka Joma. JMS himself had seen his personal account deleted twice by Facebook without any notice or due process. The flagging of Joma-related posts led one of our allies to remark, "How can they still consider Joma dangerous when he has already passed on?" Indeed, why does Facebook consider JMS dangerous even after he has passed on? Because his ideas are so powerful that he poses a threat to the status quo? Because his influence over social movements worldwide constitutes an existential threat to monopoly capitalist rule? At age 83, Joma was truly no threat to the poor and exploited, to the workers and peasants and toiling masses. But we do understand why the imperialists and their fascist agents are somehow threatened by Joma's words and ideas. These are no longer just ideas, since these have long been transformed into a material force for social revolution. The good news is that we were able to have our pages published again after we contested the blatant censorship done to those who only wish to honor the legacy of JMS. Facebook censorship, incidentally, is one of the topics covered in Ka Joma's latest book, entitled The People's Democratic Revolution is Invincible. The book is a compilation of his articles written just before he passed on. The title of the book is taken from JMS' valedictory address to the revolutionary forces and people, which according to Ka Juli was finalized while he was already in hospital confinement. These articles provide timely analysis on important world events and historic changes in Philippine society. These showed how the author was deeply engaged in these important developments, always trying to provide insights and guidance to the mass movement. Ka Joma showed mastery of materialist dialectics as well as history and current events as he analyzed the world situation, the crisis in Ukraine, the May 2022 elections in the Philippines, the return of the Marcoses in power, the historical rise of fascism before and after World War II, and its manifestations during the pandemic. In the article, The People's Democratic Revolution is Invincible, we are reminded of JMS' unshakable faith in the masses. Even during the darkest period of our history, when the forces of reaction seemed overwhelming, he never faltered in his trust in the people, in their capacity to understand, act, and triumph against great odds. This faith in the masses is rooted in his profound understanding of the laws of history, of how from the actions of the oppressed majority a new society can be born, and how socialism remains the future of mankind. His faith in the people stems from a recognition that there are limits to cruelty and oppression, and that no matter how long it may take, even if we may not see it in our lifetime, victory belongs to the struggling masses. In his own words, it is the toiling masses and the rest of the people who fight for national liberation, democracy, and socialism against imperialism and reaction who let us hope for a bright future of world peace and common prosperity. With his latest book and the continuing publication of his previous books, we are confident that the legacy of Ka Joma will live on. He is very much alive in various movements for national and social liberation among the workers, peasants, women and youth, indigenous peoples, and other oppressed sectors. He is very much alive in the revolutionary struggles led by proletarian parties all over the world. Because unlike in social media, Ka Joma's ideas can no longer be unpublished nor deleted. His ideas cannot be censored nor banned. His teachings have given rise to a powerful material force for change, enduring, ever-expanding, and in his own words, truly invincible. Mabuhay ang alaala ni Ka Joma. Ka Joma Lives.
Thank you very much for your opening remarks, Nato. Now we move on to the launching of the first book, The Filipino People's Democratic Revolution is Invincible, the anthology of his selected writings from 2022, including articles, speeches, statements, and interviews. As you will see in the anthology of his 2022 writings, last year was eventful, and Ka Joma remained up to date and abreast of the many things occurring around the world and in his homeland of the Philippines. You can see his commitment to proletarian internationalism in his letters of solidarity to organizations and international comrades. You can see the attention he paid to current events and global conflicts and their effects on the working class and oppressed masses in his articles on the major events of the day. You can see his deep love and dedication to the cause of the Filipino people and the national democratic struggle in his speeches and statements recalling the devastations of martial law and his urgings for all Filipino patriots to take up the mantle of revolution. You can even see that, beyond his political work, he was also a regular person, trying to maintain his personal communications and connections through Facebook, fighting Meta and its suppression. He always tried to stay connected to the masses in whatever way he could. To further introduce the book, I will read an excerpt from the foreword written by editor Ka Julie, who describes it better than I can. The Filipino People's Democratic Revolution is Invincible is the last of Joma's annual selected writings as he left us, his family, and the Filipino Revolutionary Forces bereaved on December 16, 2022, after 18 days of painful confinement at the University Medical Center Utrecht. Ka Julie decided to adopt the title he gave to his valedictory speech to the revolutionary forces and the people, the final draft of which he finished at the UMCU. She was certain that Joma would have liked the title, as she was quite sure that even with his death, the invincibility of the people's democratic revolution would be guaranteed by the revolutionary forces and the people's struggle until victory. Let Ka Joma live in our continuing struggle for the victory of the people's democratic revolution. We will have two reviewers for this book. Our first reviewer is Thomas Hofland. Thomas has been a very dear friend and comrade to the Filipino people. In fact, he is a friend of the Filipino people in struggle. Alongside his work on the board of Revolutionary Eenheid or Revolutionary Unity, and his solidarity organizing within the Palestinian struggle through Samidu Netherlands and the International Center for Palestinian Studies. Our second reviewer is Joseph Santos. He is an organizer and journalist who had the occasion to meet, talk with, and interview Ka Joma and Ka Julie for various projects over the years. Take it away, reviewers.
Thank you, comrades. Dear comrades and friends, I feel very honored today to be asked and to be speaking here as a reviewer for the Filipino People's Democratic Revolution is Invincible. The last of Ka Joma's writings that he wrote before he sadly passed away last year, and that is also why I of course feel that today is in a way a heavy day, because it is the first time that we releasing a book by Joma, but without Joma himself being there to even just at least provide additional context and make some jokes about the book and about what happened in the previous year. So I feel that today is also about paying respect to Joma and not only reviewing the book, but also celebrating his accomplishments and the accomplishments of the organizations that he helped establish and the movement that he worked for his entire life. First of all, I want to congratulate and thank very much Comrade Julie de Lima for editing, for making this book available to us, and of course doing that in a period that we know has been very difficult, but we are very thankful in that way that you are carrying on also the work that in a way you know you have to do, but it's not easy all the time. I will just highlight a couple of parts from the book, especially regarding the international situation, as many more other reviewers are talking about all of the different topics and aspects that are presented in the book, which are a lot because Joma was writing a lot. And I think this is one of the first things we have to acknowledge when we see this book, is that even though Comrade Joma, he was living in exile, exiled from his home country, when he was living under Dutch state repression and didn't have the easy and luxurious life that some of the reactionary media tried to portray, he was a very, very dedicated revolutionary, you know, and this is something I think we should really take as a lesson for ourselves, that the situation we are in, and of course with Comrade Joma, he has spoken, and also in this book speaks about it, the experience of being imprisoned, of being exiled, of having difficult situations, but remaining strong and having the steadfastness and the perseverance to continue despite all the attacks that are being put on Comrade Joma. In this way, I also want to, and I think it's also shown in the book, even though maybe Comrade Joma, he was relatively of older age, objectively speaking, let's say biologically, he was also very young in his mind and very open to new comrades, to new initiatives, always willing to provide anniversary statements, to provide introductory statements, to be part and to continue to be part of important political discussions that are going on. As comrades have mentioned, of course, the last year was also a year in which the imperialist contradictions have intensified a lot, and he was always present in the debates happening around all these contradictions in Ukraine, for example, but also in the Philippines itself, the global rise of fascism. And I would like to highlight also that there are also, for example, solidarity statements to the militant Filipino LGBTQ organization La Kapati Laguna, and there's a solidarity statement to the National Students Federation of Pakistan. And if you read the statements, you see the genuine concern and admiration also that Comrade Joma has for these people to continue the struggle. And in a way, he is very humble to them. He will never, and this is something I think we can all learn from Joma as well, while he had a very strong, principled, clear politics, and he would tell you if he disagreed with you, at the same time, he would disagree with you in a way not to make a fight or an argument, but in a way to help each other to move forward in the political discussion and the relationship and the work that we were all doing with each other, of course. And regarding that, like one of the, I think, important, very important statements in this book is his remarks at the launch of the 2 volumes on the Communist Party of the Philippines, also a collection of writings. But because, of course, after the death of Joma, a lot of the reactionary media, they were claiming, this will be the end of the struggle in the Philippines, this will be the end of the national democratic movement, and especially the end of the armed struggle. But I think if you read the remarks of Joma, in which he outlines the general development, the establishment, development, and the current situation of the revolutionary movement in the Philippines, he says, now the CPP has more than 150,000 members. The new People's Army has thousands of red fighters with automatic rifles and operates in more than 110 guerrilla fronts nationwide. It is augmented by the tens of thousands of members of the People's Militia and Self-Defense, units of the Revolutionary Mass Organizations, and within the frame of the NDFP, the Revolutionary Mass Organizations and local alliances have millions of members. So it's very clear if we see this, and when we hear the stories of comrades who are in the Philippines or who are doing exposure trips to the Philippines, that it's impossible that if Comrade Joma dies, that the movement stops. And this is one of the, I think, also the great achievements of Comrade Joma is to, and not only him, but exactly the whole organization and what he was, in a way, also a very important part of, to educate, organize, recruit a new generation of revolutionaries in a way that they really take the leadership of the revolution as well. And this, I feel, is one of the greatest achievements of the Philippine Revolution, because there has been no single other communist party in the whole world which has been struggling for this long in the same organizational way, but always adapting to the context that changes, to the internal struggles that emerge, and always was able to renew itself in a way, or adapt to the situation, and make sure the revolutionary movement is growing and getting stronger. I will not say much more about the book for now, but I want to end mainly with a call for people to support the national democratic struggle of the Filipino people. I want to emphasize to comrades the scientific and the sober way in which, and the very true way in which Comrade Joma always was giving advice to communists living, for example, in the Netherlands, speaking for the young comrades here in the Netherlands, that we have to continue building, sometimes very patiently, the mass movement in the Netherlands, and at the same time extend our proletarian international duty to support the revolutions that are going on in the Philippines, in Turkey, Kurdistan, in Palestine, in India, because these are people struggling at the forefront against the imperialist system, which we know is at the roots also of the problems that exist in the Netherlands. We know the Netherlands is part of the imperialist powers exploiting the Filipino people, the Indian people, the Palestinian people. And we know that through the victory of their struggles, we will also be able to gain victories, to build the mass movement, and to eventually, hopefully, wage a socialist revolution. So comrades, I want to thank you all for giving me this opportunity to briefly say something about the last book of Joma. I don't really have the words to describe rightfully, I think, the impact that Joma has had in the Philippines, but also internationally. As previous reviewer said, Joma was one of the most important revolutionaries of the past century, and then also of this century, and he will for surely be living on for many more centuries to come. And I think that is a good thing we have to keep remembering, and we are part of that continuation as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Next up, we will have Joseph Santos giving his review.
Hello. Hi. Good afternoon to everybody, and thank you again for allowing me to share my review of this latest book of Ka Joma. Thank you again to Julie, everybody in the NDF, and I'm forever grateful for all the work you do, and that's, of course, advancing the Filipino Revolution. Like many of you here, I have been reading Maria Season's works since my eyes learned to see clearly. When I joined mass organizations, staying in cramped staff houses, in between classroom breaks and underneath the roofs of dingy shacks as it neared midnight, Joma's works were a consistent feature of our study to propel the Philippine Revolution. My personal favorite among Ka Joma's works is Struggle for National Democracy, or SND, as it's commonly called. The collected articles and speeches contained in SND offers insights on just about any topic, from culture and the arts to militarism, as well as historical perspectives on colonialism and imperialism. It showcases the depth of analysis enabled by Marxist-Leninist Maoist lens. At a closer look, one can also chart the political narrative of Joma's earlier years, allowing a glimpse of the lessons in that formative period of his and in the country's history. SMD is a document of Joma's political history, as well as a guide for the present, with some of the sharpest analysis about the national democratic struggle. And now, reading through Joma's selected writings in 2022 invokes the same thoughts, and it follows the same vein, about what was a monumental and whirlwind year for all of us. This book should be considered essential for anyone interested in understanding the seemingly baffling events that unfolded in the past 12 months. I know that our experiences, especially now, are filled with emotions. At the moment, the rise and revival of fascist powers in the world, and in the Philippines especially, has shaken the hearts and sullied the resolve of some of us. But for hope, we look to the masses, where Ka Joma has always kept his eyes laser focused. In the early segments of this book, Ka Joma first explains to us the nature of fascism, how it emerged, and why it will always be a response of desperation by the reactionary classes. In On Fascism Before and After the War, he writes, "There is a ruling class which owns the principal means of production and which runs the state as an instrument of violence to compel the exploited class to perform its productive role and suppress any resistance to the ruling system." Ka Joma traces the entangled roots of fascism and colonialism in the Philippines. He helps his readers understand that imperialist forces have been working on co-opting the native population for centuries. The Marcos presidents, either of the two, are not innovations of monopoly capitalism, but signs of greater decay. Joma shows us that the oppressing classes do not deserve an ounce of our respect. I particularly enjoy it when he can't help but take a jab against the late dictator Marcos. He says that Marcos Sr. grew up adoring the fascist collaborationist actions of his father Mariano, who'd been part of the early fascist movements in the Philippines. Joma quips that Ferdinand Marcos Sr. worshipped his traitor father so much that when he became president, Marcos named so many roads, bridges, and buildings after him. The fascism of the early 1900s and of today follow a similar pattern. Joma writes, "Fascism tried at first to gather mass support by using slogans of nationalism and socialism, but eventually became a tool of the big bourgeoisie and landlords." But of course, we always have reasons to be optimistic. Despite the fanatical hurrah accompanying fascist movements, Ka Joma says that this fleeting fascination by the public is ultimately worn out by promoting the most advanced analysis and conducting campaigns among the masses. Fascism can never totally conceal its anti-people character. In the book's pages, Joma makes full use of his prodigious memory from a lifetime of revolutionary theory and practice. Many forget that he himself was a survivor of martial law, in addition to being one of its chief adversaries. Fittingly, for a time when disinformation runs rampant, he offers his thoughts on how the historical weave about Marcos and martial law has been twisted. As we know, fascism breeds lies. In his message to Tanggol Kasaysayan, Joma joined many prominent historians in exposing the work of the reactionary propaganda machine during the election period. He declared that the false history about the Philippines being known before as Maharlika and ruled by the Taliano family, which ultimately through the ages delivered gold to the Marcos in a quantity beyond the mining done by the whole world, is a fairy tale contrived by Marcos. When the election results came in last year, everyone, whether supporter or opposition, knew that there was fraud littered through the entire electoral process. Filipinos were either blissfully blinded by their oppressors or woefully tired at the prospect of squaring off against the terrible tandem of families that is Marcos Duterte, which Joma calls in this book the most brutal and corrupt political dynasties that have ruled the Philippines. In retrospect, however, the most common thread running through selected writings isn't Joma's condemnation of the situation, but his admonition for hope in struggle. He reminds us that fascism intensified is a fascism that is afraid. Last June, Joma told us that there is no honor among thieves. The Marcos and Duterte political dynasties have a temporary and unstable alliance because of their selfish lust for power and bureaucratic loot. Towards the end of last year, that statement has proved to be much truer, as the cracks between the unholy Marcos-Duterte alliances have begun to emerge. On the world stage last year, we saw the latest imperialist-fueled war break out when Russia invaded Ukraine. On the surface, though, it looked like the type of aggression driven by Vladimir Putin. But in reality, Joma says it is also a product of US-NATO interests in the Eastern Bloc. Joma showed us that the US-NATO alliance, years of aggression by the US-NATO alliance in Ukraine and the attacks against the Donbass region, that this eruption of war has been a long time coming, and it's exactly what the Western powers wanted to happen. Put in simple terms, Joma teaches us, if you aim a dagger at Russia's neck, the time will come when it will be in range. In his last few months, Joma wrote about the extreme crisis his people face and the tasks ahead. It was during this time that he touted the revolution and carried out with the correct and effective leadership of the revolutionary proletariat as Invincible. Strangely, I thought I'd never see the passing of Joma in my lifetime. It's hard to imagine a period in my life that wasn't punctuated by his thoughts or shaped by his actions that he and also many others had taken. It's hard to imagine a man who embodies history succumb to mortal limitations. This loss has pained many greatly, and myself included. It was like learning that the hero from your favorite story had stopped his adventures. As Joma lay in great pain for weeks in his hospital bed, he issued his last statement, proclaiming the revolution again to be invincible. I felt it was Joma saying that death would not be his or the revolution's undoing, comforted by the thought that while he will not see victory, he has done his part, and what a part that was, to make it possible and hasten its arrival so that many others will carry on. The body suffers terribly, the struggle prevails, and indeed Ka Joma lives. When Joma started his political activism, the revolution was at a very low point, and in stopping and reversing that decline, and he led the stopping and reversing of that decline. Now, despite the non-stop fascist attacks, the revolution is a formidable political force. Joma's politics may have started with a whimper, but it surely ended with a bang. Maraming salamat po. Mabuhay sa Ka Joma.
Thank you so much to our book reviewers for preparing the reviews and taking the time to be with us today to deliver them. I just wanted to take the time also now to acknowledge who we have here with us today. I apologize in advance for my pronunciation. We have Niek Scheerder, Dagmar Eberhardt from the German-Philippine Friendship Association, and we also have many people here from Revolutionary Einheit, our friends and supporters always. We also have 144 participants in the webinar, and I will just take the time to also give a shout out to some of those people here today. We have Arnold Jod Ask from the Red Party Norway, Lisa Massa, the General Secretary of the International League of People's Struggles, Edre Olalia, part of the International Association of Democratic Lawyers and also the Secretary General of the National Union of People's Lawyers, Carol P. Aurelio from Bayan, and also Jonas Stahl, an artist and author. We are going to actually show a quick book teaser that will give you a chance to see where you can purchase the book and online.
Bangon sa pagkakabusabos, bangon mga bihag ng gutom. Katwiran ay bulkang sasabog, kung lakas na dadagundong.
And for those here who are with us today, you can also scan the QR code that's on the screen and you'll be taken to a list of links for where you can buy the book. It's also being placed in the chat for anyone who's joining us online. Next up, we have a cultural performance from Himigrante from Hong Kong.
The gorilla is like a poet, keen to the rustle of leaves, the break of twigs, the ripples of the river, the smell of fire, and the ashes of departure. The gorilla is like a poet, he has merged with the trees, the bushes and the rocks, ambiguous but precise, will burst on the law of monster of myriad images. The gorilla is like a poet in rhyme with nature, the subtle rhythm of the greenery, the inner silence, the outer innocence, the sleep, tinsel and grace that ensnares the enemy. The gorilla is like a poet into the rustle of leaves, the break of twigs, the ripples of the river, the smell of fire, the ashes of departure. The gorilla is like a poet, he moves with the green-brown multitude, in bush burning with red flowers, that crown and heart and all, swarming the rain's flood, marching at last against the stronghold, endless movement of strength. Behold the protracted theme, the people's epic, the people's war, the people's epic, the people's war, the people's epic, the people's war.
Thank you so much to Imigrante for that cultural performance. You couldn't see it, but there were a lot of people here singing along or mouthing the words, so we really appreciated it. We're gonna now move on to the launching of the second book, Ka Joma Lives, Tributes and Condolences. The outpouring of messages and tributes in the aftermath of Ka Joma's passing was a testimony to the impact that he had, not only on the National Democratic Revolutionary Movement, which he helped found, but also on revolutionary mass movements and people's struggles around the world, which he influenced through his proletarian internationalist. Over 130 messages from over 45 countries were delivered from a variety of individuals, organizations, alliances, and parties. In fact, they keep on coming in, so there actually will be a second volume of the book to include the other tributes that we're receiving. To give their perspectives and their own takeaways from the tributes and condolences given to Ka Joma are two reactors. Our first reactor is Gian Miranda, the national chairperson of Anak Bayan Philippines, a national democratic youth organization with chapters all over the world. And our second reactor is Reina Valmores, the chairperson of Bahagari, the National Democratic Alliance of LGBTQIA+ Filipinos.
Good day, everyone. I am Jaan Miranda, the National Chairperson of Anak Bayan Philippines. The Gift of the Filipino People to the World, Ka Joma, is the title of an article that I read back when the news of Professor Jose Maria Sison's death was fresh. It was written by Black Like Mao, a black Marxist-Leninist Maoist from the United States. When I read this book, it reminded me of that article and how much of an impact Ka Joma had to the world. He was not just the guiding light of the Filipino people. He was a light to other people in the struggle. Ka Joma in his youth was in the forefront of the struggle from Skaop to Kabataang Makabayan. Ka Joma was one of the youth who led the struggle inside the old Communist Party of the Philippines turned revisionist towards the establishment of a new one. The new Communist Party has proved its just and correct line in ideology, which is Marxism-Leninism and Maoism, in politics, which is Demokratikong Rebolusyong Bayan, and in organization, which is Democratic Centralism, as it just celebrated its 54th anniversary last December. It was made possible because this party applied its principles by studying what is appropriate to the current conditions, or what is called concrete analysis of concrete conditions. Even while incarcerated, and being in solitary confinement for almost 9 years, Ka Joma still found ways to study the current events in the Philippines and in the world. He clandestinely and cleverly sent out his analyses of these events as guide for comrades. But what is most admirable, although sad, is how he struggled through not being able to go back to the Philippines because his passport was cancelled. To add, he is widely tagged as a terrorist and had active death threats. In his parangal in the Philippines, comrades ran down all the problems that he faced trying to get back and then settling in the Netherlands. It was no easy feat. Ka Joma continued serving the Filipino people from thousands of miles away. He continued studying the Philippine society in relation to the world crisis and wrote more books and documents to serve as references whenever other revolutionaries, especially Filipinos, are in peril or faced with something new, or whatever new means in a capitalist society. Ka Joma taught us that a revolutionary thrives where the struggle lies greater. A revolutionary thrives anywhere and everywhere as long as Marxism, Leninism, and Maoism is used in studying society and navigating everyday life. His service to the people was not limited to his writings. Ka Joma pushed for the establishment of the International League of People's Struggles. He led in uniting the struggling peoples of the world who are anti-imperialist and anti-fascist. A league where organizations can gather to plan for campaigns and echo it to countries to earn the support of other struggling people. He made the people know that we are not and never will be alone in the struggle. We should always unite against the narrowest target, imperialism. It is in this nature that he also led and participated in meetings with other revolutionary, socialist, or communist parties of different countries. He would criticize what was wrong and give advice to organizations and parties in countries with fraternal connections with the CPP. More importantly, Ka Joma is a keen and firm anti-revisionist. Actively, he would put out statements condemning revisionists, causing disunity, and laying out his analysis on these wrong interpretations of MLM. Yet he always emphasized that our biggest contribution to the world is the victory of the Philippines' National Democratic Revolution and the construction of a socialist society. Ka Joma taught us that a revolutionary is an internationalist and an anti-revisionist. Our organization, Anak Bayan, the most comprehensive national democratic organization of the youth, was established when Ka Joma sensed and told comrades about the urgency of establishing a comprehensive organization of the youth, decades after Kabataang Makabayan went underground. He always emphasized in his writings and through practice, when he was young, that the youth does not have power on our own. We have talent, creativity, and intellect, yet they are nothing if we do not join these talents with the struggles of the basic masses. Therefore, the youth is best effective if the youth is forged in the struggle with the proletariat and peasants. In his video messages to us in the Philippines, he was always lively. Friends who talked about Ka Joma said that he was always joyful and he loved the karaoke. Ka Joma taught us that the revolutionary has a youthful vigor and optimism towards the victory of the National Democratic Revolution. A revolutionary believes in the primary unity of the proletariat as the hukbong mapagpalaya and the peasants as the pangunahing pwersa. Ka Joma has laid out for us, through his life and writings, how to be revolutionary. But it is not his job to fill out every single information. We use what we learned from him on how to study through the MLM lens to navigate life and give answers to all contradictions that we will face. This book stands as a testament that everything Ka Joma did, he did not only for the Filipino people, but for the people of the world. His life, his lectures, his books, his poems and songs, all of these will remain alive with us as our shining light, guiding us every step of the way. Ka Joma may have left us physically, but he will always be alive in the hearts of the people of the world, the revolutionaries struggling to defeat imperialism and fighting to build a socialist society towards a communist world. This only means that Ka Joma lives forever. Highest salutations to Ka Joma. Mabuhay ang pambansa demokratikong pakikibaka ng mamamayang Pilipino.
Thank you very much to Jian for that message. Now we're actually going to have Reina join us live in the Zoom and to give the reaction, the second reaction.
Hello. Not sure, but I'm not able to turn on my video. Thank you so much for that introduction. Again, just so we could all level off. We're here to launch the second book this time, titled Ka Joma Lives, Tributes and Condolences. So it's essentially, a compendium of well wishes, messages by various people from around the globe, as was mentioned earlier. Again, I am Dana Valmores. I am the chairperson of Bahaghari. Bahaghari, just for everyone's benefit, is actually the Filipino word for rainbow. And so we are the National Democratic Alliance of LGBTQ plus Filipinos. We have chapters all across the country, and also we're starting to develop chapters overseas as well. For this book, I'll be drawing heavily on some of the messages that I think were of particular importance to me as an activist, a national democratic activist, as well as an LGBTQ plus activist. There we go. The video is working now. Hello to everyone. So there are 4 sections in the book, particularly because these are messages from different groups. We have messages and tributes from government and political parties, international organizations, Philippine-based organizations, and other individuals who have personally known Ka Joma. I'd like to go first to some of the messages from the government and political parties. Of course, we have progressive, socialist, communist parties of different ideological stripes in this book. Marxist-Leninist, Maoist, other states as well, and their departments, such as the Royal Norwegian Ministry, which has been very active, and they have been very active in the Philippine peace process. I'd like to point out one quote which stuck with me. This was actually from the Russian Maoist Party, from the message that they sent in. They say, the firm stand of Comrade Season against revisionism helped the genuine communists to reorganize themselves twice, referring, of course, to the rectification movements launched within the CPP in 1960s and the 1990s. And last but not the least, Comrade Season was among those who formulated Marxism, Leninism, Maoism as a new stage in developing Marxism in the 1980s. The continuous Philippine Revolution and teachings of Comrade Season serve as an example and inspiration to us, Russian communists, who are trying to rebuild the revolutionary movement from the ashes, and the genuine communists and revolutionaries throughout the world. This particular quote stuck with me because we always learn through world history, right? How the peoples in Russia were able to succeed in developing a dictatorship of the proletariat. The USSR was built, although eventually the USSR was also dissolved. We often always question among us here in the Philippines what happened afterwards, right? Because as many of us know, the dissolution of the USSR was actually not popular, or not the desire of plenty of the civilians within the scope of the USSR. And its dissolution was really a product of betrayal, a revisionist betrayal of socialist construction. But seeing this book was how I realized that there continue to be Russian comrades trying to rebuild um, what was initially lost. And someone like Joma, as was mentioned earlier in the speech by Jean Miranda, his works and the works and struggles of Filipinos um, fighting for our liberation here in the Philippines continues to be an inspiration even to people from what were formerly USSR states. There's a category here in the book as well for international organizations, but I like to skip and go back to that in a bit. I'd like to go straight to my thoughts on the book when it comes to the Philippine-based organizations that have sent in their messages. So we have the NDFP and its member organizations. We have political prisoners sending their messages and tributes to Ka Joma. It's very touching. I do want to highlight this particular piece, given that the difference between the Philippine-based organization statements in the book in comparison to the international organizations is that a lot of these Philippine orgs, their testimonies are by people who have personally known Joma since the very beginning. I'm talking about the time when Joma was still founding SCAU, or the Student Cultural Association of UP in 1959, when they co-founded Kabataang Makabayan in 1964, the movement for the advancement of nationalism in 1966, eventually re-establishing the Communist Party of the Philippines in 1968, the development of the New People's Army in 1969, and the National Democratic Front. I like to highlight this quote. This was actually by NDFPP's consultants who are currently detained, currently in jail at the MMDJ for Camp Bagong Diwa in Metro Manila. I quote, Ka Joma has been undisputedly credited even by the GRP and outside observers of the peace negotiations for his singular role in breaking intractable deadlocks or impasses. For example, on the indemnification of human rights victims under the Marcos regime, which was the final obstacle to the completion of Karil. It was always Ka Joma who found a mutually acceptable approach, compromise position, or reformulation, taking into account and flexibly accommodating the GRP position while remaining consistent with the NDFP's principled position and objectives. For this, Ka Joma acquired the reputation, even among the GRP delegation, of being the good cop in the NDFP team. I actually want to bridge this to another quote. This time, this is from Frans Termeed of Arlac, Belgium. No longer a Philippine-based organization, but it has the same essence. In it, Frans says, Ludo Martins and Joma Season disagreed on different points. For instance, on the assessment of the Soviet Union, but that did not prevent discussion. He wrote a tribute to President Gonzalez of the Shining Path of Peru, even though he had condemned that Peruvian Maoists' adventuristic politics. He also, much to my surprise, defended Russia's special operation against Maidan Ukraine and NATO, though at the same time he condemned Russian imperialism in general. I chose to highlight these two quotes out of the several hundreds here, or more than 100 here in the book, because it does highlight something that's very practical and something that I also, as a young activist, aspire to learn from, given Ka Joma's experience. Essentially, it's being firm in principle but flexible in tactics. Joma is really an exemplary in terms of never abandoning your position, your ideological line, while also making sure that you're able to adapt to the concrete situation you're in. One of the things that so many young activists like me do is, alliance building, the development of unities with other groups who we may share unities with on various issues, but may also have many huge differences with on other issues. It's a huge challenge, and I'm sure it is for it's something that so many of our listeners now have experiences on as well. But looking at how Ka Joma was able to pull all of these people from communist parties to states and their departments, to even mainstream political parties, to different NGOs, for example, all with different sets of beliefs, and getting to see what points of unity there can be between us. It's something that we strive to learn from, and I think something all of us could definitely learn from, given Ka Joma's life. The reason I wanted to leave last the messages or my thoughts given the messages on the international organizations is that, as an LGBT activist, there is a struggle there for people like me. Just for context, in the book, in Tributes and Condolences, plenty of the messages from international organizations come from the ILPS and their chapters, NGOs, environmentalist groups, and women's organizations, particularly the Movement for the Emancipation of Women and the International Women's Alliance. So I'm nearing the tail end of my discussion here, of my review, but I want to quote the message by the IWA, or the International Women's Alliance, where they said, Professor Jose Maria Sison has provided us, the women fighting to free themselves of the shackles of patriarchy, feudalism, and imperialism, with extremely critical tools of analysis. His revolutionary vision and teachings have rooted our struggle to contest not only monopoly capital, but to work towards dismantling of patriarchy. This has been, the reason I tried to put this quote here. There's always that kind of ideological struggle for women's groups, and also for organizations like ours, for LGBT organizations, on how we approach the very basic concept of liberation for women, liberation for the LGBT. I'm sure many of us here have asked, why is it that there are people who are misogynist? Why is it that there are people who are homophobic? It would be easy to chalk it up to individual behaviors. This person just happens to hate women, or have been raised with values to view women as lesser than men. Some people also take it a step further by, trying to see maybe this is because of religion, of organized religion. But we also see, of course, although there are fundamentalist religious groups that peddle misogynistic and homophobic views, we also see that there are churches and faith-based organizations that are one and stand in solidarity with women and members of the LGBT community in their struggle for equality. So it's not religion per se. Now, Professor Jose Maria Sison's magnum opus, which is Philippine Social Reality, it narrates and states the basic strata of Philippine society, which is that the majority of us, are workers and farmers, toiling and being exploited by the classes, the ruling classes. And when it comes to women, when it comes to LGBT persons, women, for example, are not a class, but an important social sector, and it's actually reflected in the composition of the NDFP. We have the Makibaka, or Malayang Kilusan ng Bagong Kababaihan, or the new movement of free women. Women are not a class, but a social sector. Same goes for the LGBT. And so we are essentially also part of the majority of Filipino people who are belonging to the working and farming classes. So, to put it briefly, the vast majority of women and LGBT persons in the Philippines are themselves workers and peasants, and therefore, to claim to wish to liberate these sectors means to stand for the liberation of the classes they belong to. And that is precisely what is articulated in Philippine society and revolution. Um, as I was asking earlier, the basic premise of how do we even achieve this quote unquote liberation? And I think, one thing that I realized looking at the life of Ka Joma, the works that he's put out, and also the books um, that he's written, as well as the testimonies of people who've known him in this book, it points to how the tools are actually there. Ka Joma left us with a treasure trove for which we could solve the woman question and the LGBT question. And that is that the only way for women and LGBT persons to be liberated, both in the Philippines and in the world, is through the development of a new economic system which allows for the creation of a new culture, a culture of genuine love, acceptance, and equality. If you guys are familiar with Joan Hinton, there's a quote where she says, eventually, socialism will sweep capitalism off of the earth, and with it, the exploitation of women, of all peoples, including women. And it is through Joma's work, his articulation of Philippine society, that I've come to dare and say that the same is true for LGBT persons. We say it here in the Philippines, lalaya ang sangkabaklaan sa paglaya ng bayan. Or in English, the LGBT will be free alongside the liberation and freedom of the Filipino people. With this, I'd like to end with a quote that Ka Joma once said during the 2019 Metro Manila Pride. He said, "Resist together, wage revolution together." And I hope that, looking at the immense and incredible diversity of messages we've seen, we can carry this energy forward and also build a stronger movement of women, of youth, of LGBT persons to carry out and fulfill to its success the National Democratic Revolution of the Philippines. Thank you very much. Mabuhay po.
Thank you so much to our reactors for providing their insights into these tributes and their own personal reflections on Ka Joma's impact on their political work. I'm really glad we got your video working really well. And again, we'll show the QR code for the people here to scan, where you can buy at least the first book that is out now. And also in the chat, you should be able to click on the link and be taken to the same list of vendors. Up next in the program, we have a short video from different youth speakers who will tell us what comes to mind when they think of Ka Joma, his influence on themselves, on the movement, and on the plight and resistance of the oppressed peoples of the world. Following that, we will have a cultural performance of poems written by Ka Joma from Louis, Ari, and Ricky from Canada. And then after, we will have a question and answer period with Ka Joma's lifelong comrade in arms and in love, Ka Julie. Please prepare any questions you may have for those who are joining us in the webinar. And I think last time I looked, there was 160 of you, so that's great. Please write down your questions in the Q&A box, and the tech will pass them on to me. If you are here present, you can always write your questions down, and they will also come to me. So now let's watch the cultural and the video.
what comes to mind when you think of Joma's legacy? What comes to mind when I think of Joma's legacy from the youth perspective is the vibrant and militant struggle of the National Democratic Mass Movement, which he started almost 60 years ago, which is being continued by various sectors of Philippine society, including the mass-oriented and patriotic youth of today, which this legacy is primarily carried on. Joma's legacy, and quite frankly, the legacy of the entire progressive and revolutionary movement, which finds its beginnings in Joma's revolutionary work and teachings of Marxist-Leninist Maoist theory, will forever be remembered and immortalized in the annals of history until the final victory is reached and the Filipino people's aspirations for national democracy and socialism is ultimately achieved.
As the educational officer of Anak Bayan Toronto and as a poet for the people, Joma showed me how to bridge the theory and analytical understanding of Filipino society with practice. Every line of his poetry is charged with this theory and understanding and is written in a way that anybody can understand. That is poetry for the masses, essentially. That's what we have to do as cultural workers and youth activists, is bring this analysis to the people so that we can arouse, organize, and mobilize the masses for national industrialization and genuine democracy.
Hi, I'm from Anak Bayan, BC, and I will be reading out a small statement we prepared for Joma. Joma sees on, a light for all modern revolutionaries, will live on through our movements. He is in every chant, every rally, and every kasama. His honor burns within the proletariat. He will be present in the liberation of the Filipino. His ideas are the seedlings that feed the minds of the masses. We hold his teachings in the highest regard, just as he held our passion until his last moments on this earth. And we thank him for his time.
He dedicated a life of service to the people, and to me, Ka Joma was really a revolutionary poet. And it was through his work that we were able to have a deep understanding of social realities in the Philippines, and therefore the fight continues today. We continue to fight for equality and genuine change. And regardless of state propaganda, I think his work lives on through many of us.
For me, Joma symbolizes strength, defiance, and hope. He never chose the easy route. He was always defiant against the oppressive and exploitative system in the Philippines and in the entire world, and he never capitulated to that system. He is a person of hope because he shows that there is still a future for us, that we can still fight for a better world.
Hello everyone, this is Rizal from Anak Bayan, South Seattle, and what I wanted to share and what I've been able to learn and see for myself as a young activist is that the youth are capable of so much more than we're told, and Ka Joma reminds us that there's a responsibility to be able to teach the youth to believe in the free Philippines that we're fighting for, but it is also the responsibility of the youth to be active participants in building it. To organize, to be able to understand the issues in other sectors of society, to be where the people are, and to be able to harness our creativity, our imagination, our discipline, and enthusiasm to advance the national democratic movement in the Philippines, and to also be firm in our solidarity with global anti-imperialist movements. And so we honor the legacy Ka Joma has left in the youth sector that's rapidly growing and overseas, and also honor his contribution, his lifelong contribution to the national democratic movement in the Philippines. And so, mabuhay Ka Joma!
To Professor Jose Maria Sison, or Ka Joma, revolutionary and poet in the struggle, thank you for the guidance and the inspiration. Ricky Esguerra will read two of his poems, The Forest is Still Enchanted, written in June 1981, and The North Star is Always There, written in March 1979. In the Dark Depths, written by Ka Joma in April 1978, will be read by Eri Maestro. Pablo Neruda was one of Ka Joma's favorite poets, and he translated Neruda's The Dictators in Tagalog, Mga Diktador, and this will be read by Louis Quianio.
The forest is still enchanted. The fickle-minded spirits and fairies have fled the old trees and groves, dark caves and mounds in the shadows, mossy rocks and whispering streams. The gnarled balete and the blackbird have lost their intriguing power. The uncertainties of the past ages no longer lurk to exact awe and fear. In the forest throbs discreetly a certainty above the certainties of chopping wood, hunting boar and deer, gathering fruits, honey, and even orchids. But the forest is still enchanted. There is a new hymn in the wind. There is a new magic in the dark green. So the peasant folks say to their friends, a single fighting spirit has taken over to lure in and astonish the intruders. The North Star is always there. Whatever the part of the day, whatever the part of the year, the North Star is always there. No matter how dark the night, we can trust the light of the North Star, our guide. No matter how thick the clouds, these are froth ephemeral. The North Star scatters and floats. The North Star scatters and floats. Wherever we are, in the woods, on the plains, or at sea, by the North Star we see the route. In the archipelago, come what may, we have our sure compass. The North Star is always there. The North Star is always there.
Professor Jose Maria Sison was arrested in 1977 by the Marcos dictatorship. He was tortured, placed in solitary confinement, and imprisoned for 9 years. He wrote In the Dark Depths in 1978. The enemy wants to bury us in the dark depths of prison, but shining gold is mined from the dark depths of the earth, and the radiant pearl is dived from the dark depths of the sea. We suffer, but we endure, and draw up gold and pearl from depths of character, formed so long in struggle. April 10, 1978.
Mga Diktador ni Profesor Jose Maria Sison. Nananatili ang alingasaw sa tubuhan. Ang halo ng dugo at katawan, nanunuot na talulot, na nagdudulot ng nakakasukang pagkahilo. Sa bakitan ng mga niyog, puno ang mga libingan ng mga butong wasak, ng mga walang garalgal na paghandusay. Kausap ng maselang diktador ang mga kapitalista, mga general at mga pari. Kumikintab ang munting palaso tulad ng relo at mga rapidong halakhak ng mga may guwantes. Tumatawid kung minsan sa mga pasilyo at umuugnay sa mga boses ng patay at mga bughaw na bunganga ng mga bagong libing. Hindi nakikita ang mga umiiyak, tulad ng halamang ang mga binhi ay laging nahuhulog sa lupa. Ang malalaking bulag na dahon lumalago kahit walang liwanag. Lumalawak ng lumalawak ang pagkamuhi sa sunod-sunod na hambalos sa kailahilakbot na tubig ng latian na may ngusong puno ng putik at katahimikan.
So now we've reached the Q&A portion of our program. I don't think we have received any what comes to mind, but of course you can continue to add yours. I think I will also address one of the questions that we received in the Q&A, which is if Joma's books are available to purchase as books of poetry. They are. They're available as physical copies here, and they're also available online. We can look up some links and send them in the chat, I'm sure. And also, if you want to reach out to us and give us your email, we can also send you those links. So we are very honored to have Ka Joma with us today to answer some of the questions you might have related to the books that we're launching. We have about 15 to 20 minutes, but that's of course depending on the questions that you all have. So, you know, get busy writing some if you have them. And before we start though, I know that you maybe would like to talk a little bit about the educational campaign that's coming up soon around Ka Joma Lives.
Yeah, there's the Executive Committee of the Communist Party of the Philippines have decided and issued a memorandum for a 1-year study campaign on the works of Jose Maria Sison. This is apart from your usual or the normal reading and study of the issuances of the Communist Party of the Philippines, which you can have at the philippinerevolution.nu. Actually, the campaign has already been launched in the Philippines, and you will see from the publications in the Philippine Revolution NU that the study campaign is ongoing. I'm just here now to announce the study campaign that will be conducted internationally among the Filipinos outside the country. And the purpose is to study the works of Ka Joma, and how these reflect Marxism, Leninism, Maoism in the practice of the Philippine Revolution. And also, it makes a review of the principles, of the basic principles, programs, and policies of the party that he and the Central Committee of the Philippines put forward, and enrich, and third, enrich the social investigation and research on the conditions of the masses, especially the exploited masses of workers and peasants, and to further arouse the people to struggle for national freedom and democracy. And finally, to what do you- to plant in the consciousness of the masses the greatness of Ka Joma and his iron stand for the exploited and oppressed, for his unrelenting service to the people, and his heroism like those of Andres Bonifacio and the heroes of the Philippine Revolution. Among the particular tasks that need to be undertaken in the study campaign on the works, on the teachings of Ka Joma, would be the mass activities and as well as academic efforts that should focus on and participated in by the masses in the cities and the countryside, as well as activities focused on the academe, including the mass and social media. The study campaign on the teachings of Ka Joma will be undertaken for a whole year, but it doesn't mean that it will end with the end of 2023. There will be continuing studies afterwards, which will be planned out based on a summing up of what has been achieved in 2023. So, in this year, we will undertake various activities and measures for the whole year, including large assemblies on February 2023 to remember his, on February 8, 2023, to remember his birth date, and launch the campaign, the study campaign on his works. Then also second, the publication of 5-volume of the works of Ka Joma. Included in this will be the plan to give copies to libraries and universities and other learning institutions. Third will be the publication of the Basic Principles of Marxism-Leninism, a primer, in English and in Filipino. This has been, of course, this has already been published, but there will be more, publications. The publications will be expanded. The fourth will be the translation of Basic Principles on Marxism-Leninism in the soonest possible time, and the 5-volume in Filipino, Visayas, Ilocano, Waray, and Hiligaynon within the year. Fifth will be the launch of a series of seminars and lectures focusing on the various aspects of the teachings of Ka Joma. There would be lectures and a series of lectures on the semi-colonial and semi-feudal system in the Philippines, the continuing neo-colonial dominance of the US in the Philippines, the national democratic solution to the problems of the Filipino people, the armed struggle as the answer of the oppressed people against tyranny, and the National Democratic Front and the Democratic People's Government. There would be the collective study or review and study by leading committees of the party on the articles of Ka Joma, such as rectify errors and rebuild the party, our urgent tasks, specific characteristics of our people's war, reaffirm our basic principles and rectify errors, and stand for socialism against modern revisionism. We should use the collective study as our guide for making the summing up of our work, of our activities. And in addition, there will be the publication of popular forms of the activities to commemorate Ka Joma, including t-shirts, posters, graffiti, video, and others. And the target, which is the target of this study campaign, will be a mass demonstration of at least 1 million people on February 8, 2024 to commemorate the 85th birthday of Ka Joma and the preparation and commemoration of the 130th birthday of Chairman Mao Zedong on December 26, 2024. Yeah, so that will be basically the content of the study movement for 2023.
Thank you so much for sharing us all of that. And also, yeah, so February 8th, 2024, we have a year to prepare, everyone. So let's get going. There are two, one question, one remark from the Q&A. So and they're actually to do with the education campaign. So I will mention those first before moving on to some of the pre-prepared questions we've had.
Yes.
The first question is about this study. In the plans for that campaign, it doesn't quite say exactly how it will be delivered, but the question is for Filipinos outside the country, like outside the Philippines, or non-Filipinos who would like to study Ka Joma's educational work, especially those who support the Filipino struggles. How can they do that? Like, how can they share in the campaign? And then a suggestion, I feel like I know where the suggestion is coming from. May I include the suggestion as part of the study campaign for the study of Prof. JMS, and this was in your plan actually already. Ask your local public library, university and college library, or school library, departments, collections, etc. to purchase the books of Prof. JMS in print and ebook formats so that the books of Prof. JMS are made accessible to everyone. That is a good suggestion.
Yes.
Please do that with all of your libraries because they do theoretically listen to their readership, and so you can actually make them do that. So how can people outside the Philippines and how can non-Filipinos access the materials for this education campaign?
Well, these materials are available at the website of the Communist Party of the Philippines, which is the philippinerevolution.nu. It's all in small letters, philippinerevolution.nu.
We can put that in the chat. And also, I assume then the list of upcoming activities that you named will also be made available.
Yes, they are. Actually, they are.
Okay, great. Another question answered. There's no open questions from the chat, but please continue to send them in. I guess I can go to one of the pre-prepared questions, which is actually for the second book of tributes, which I know will have an accompanying sequel. As the person who has been by his side as his partner in struggle, what were your thoughts in seeing the outpouring of condolences to Ka Joma? Were there any that surprised you or particularly touched you?
They were particularly touching, but it didn't surprise me because even when he was alive, Joma was getting a lot of kudos from a lot of people. Yeah, so, and so actually the purpose of the study movement of the works of Ka Joma in the yearling campaign is to expand, consolidate, and strengthen the people's struggle for national liberation and democracy. We know from all that has been said today that Ka Joma's ideas and his practice of the revolution have given birth to a lot of those who would be like him in continuing the Philippine Revolution, in being creative, having the determination to pursue the struggle until victory, and so that we can proceed to socialism.
Thank you. We have one more question, but I would like to also open it up to everyone who is here, and so I'm not just also looking at the Zoom chat. But if anyone here has a question, you're also welcome to state it out loud. You don't have to pass it to me. You don't have to write even. You can just say it with your words. But in the meantime, yes, I do have another question. It's a specific one about the first book, actually, because you've edited most, if not all, many of Joma's writings over the years, and I'm sure you have a very well ingrained sense of his opinions and positions on the various topics that he wrote about. In his last anniversary message to the revolutionary forces, he mentions the line of probability that U.S. imperialism may launch a war of aggression against the people of the Philippines before the revolution occurs. What are your thoughts on that probability, and how should the revolutionary forces prepare for that possibility?
We have always been discussing this eventuality. And I think from the very beginning of his writings, he already said that there is this probability. Even before, even now, we can see that U.S. intervention is a continuing presence in the Philippines, U.S. imperialist intervention. So from 1968 until now, this is very palpable. So indeed, there's going to be U.S. aggression. The aggression is already ongoing, but not yet the direct bringing in of US large contingents of U.S. forces. But you can see it now because this Marcos second regime has further opened up the Philippine military bases for more American soldiers to come in. So the probability of an open aggression when the Philippine Revolution succeeds further is very great.
Yes, I think I was also going to mention that too, because that was recently a development that was reported on in the news. There is another question from Zoom, and it's about the comics version or illustrated version of Philippine Society and Revolution.
Yes.
I've also seen this. Is there any possibility that this will be republished or made again? Plans for that?
Yes, there's we can republish it because it's a matter of photographing it or asking someone to update it.
Okay. Yeah, we definitely should. I know I've seen it, and it's
I think there's a copy here somewhere.
Okay, well then yes, okay. Well, this is our task now. We shall find it, we shall digitize it, we shall make it available. Okay.
Okay.
This is something we will do. Ooh, another question, this time from the room. Amazing. And I love this question because this is also going to be something that I was going to ask about. How do you think, solidarity movements could contribute to the education campaign? Especially in terms of the suppression of the dissemination of Joma's books and other revolutionary materials by the Philippine fascist regime. So is there a particular role or advantage for solidarity movements to support the wider accessibility of Joma's works against repression?
Well, of course there are. Because as you can see in the when the Facebook pages, for example, of Joma's of the tributes to Joma were first suppressed, and there was a lot of protests. Facebook eventually restored the pages, and in the same manner, campaigns by solidarity organizations will have a very big effect. So, yeah, go on with the campaign and then also help promote Joma's works among your constituencies.
Yes, and so this is a call to action for all of you in the room and also Zoom everywhere in the world. The chances are there is a Philippine Solidarity organization already, or if not, you can create one. And if you want to, get in touch with people who can help you learn more about how that can be done, you can also, contact friends.
And also in the production of posters, T-shirts, videos, etc.
Yes.
That will be a lot of help.
Yes. So there you go. You know what to do. And if you don't know what to do, then you know who to ask about it.
You ask Clara.
Well, I mean,
she's full of ideas.
Anyway, you know who to ask. There is There's no more further questions in the chat, so I think that we can actually start to wrap up now. If you do have questions, though, you can always share them with us. We are here. But as we move on, I want to think in advance and think of all the people who might be like leaving this webinar early, that there is a group photo we're planning to take at the end. So if you can stay, please stay. But thank you everyone for participating and listening to our Q&A session. Special thanks go out to our opening speaker, Nato, the reviewers and reactors, Thomas and Joseph, Jan and Reina, anyone who gave us a cultural performance, so Joy, Imigrante, Louis, Ari, and Ricky. And also we will have one at the end by Drew from the US. Everyone who contributed to the What Comes to Mind video, of course, Kajuli, everyone working hard behind the scenes for TEC, the International Network for Philippine Studies, and the organizers for today's event, which is the National Democratic Front of the Philippines International Office. I see that there are two more things in the chat, so I'm going to mention them. One of them is from Jonas, and it's Dear Julie, following up on the question on the role of solidarity movements in propagating Professor Sison's work and thoughts, what do you feel are the key lessons from his work and life for those struggling for social liberation outside of the Philippines?
That's from Jonas. Well, of course, it is to study. Of course, it is to study theory, conduct social investigation, conduct summings up, and so that your revolutionary practice will be incrementally be more effective year after year.
Thank you. And this is actually a related question, so I'll skip to that, is what is the impact of internationalist solidarity from foreigners to Filipino people? Salute from the Maltese comrades again. There are many examples, so maybe you could speak of some highlights or mention like some of the big campaigns around, for example, martial law and some of the prisoners there, or with Joma's arrests also, the cases.
Well, of course, solidarity campaigns are very effective. And during Joma's, in my case, for example, the strong campaign waged by the Filipino women effected my release from prison after I gave birth to our youngest son. And then, in the fall of Marcos, the international movement of Filipinos and the solidarity movement that they created abroad helped a lot in toppling the dictator.
Yeah, I think there are.
The EDSA revolution was a product of the struggle of the Filipinos and then the solidarity that they got from the world.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of examples of those. I know many people who actually were detainees during that time who remember the letters that they got from people around the world and how much it heartened them. And there were like bags and bags and sacks of letters from people all over the world coming to these like prisons during martial law. And we obviously still do have very many political prisoners. So if you want to get involved in campaigns to free them, there are people as part of organizations in this room that you can ask for that.
Yeah.
The last question, this is so classic. It's like, we're done with the Q&A, but then I love it. There's like more things coming. It brings people's minds up. What about Joma's works are like good starters for beginners? I think you mentioned basic principles of Marxism, Leninism, which will be available in multiple languages. Also, what else might you recommend as an introduction to Joma's works for beginners?
Oh, of course, there is Philippine Society and Revolution. And the first collection of his works from 1968, Foundation for the Revival, Foundation.
SND. Struggle for National Democracy.
Struggle for National Democracy. The first volume of
Resumption.
Foundation for the Resumption of the Philippine Revolution would be very instructive.
Foundation for the Resumption of the Philippine Revolution.
Yeah.
Yes. And again, if you are interested in where those books can be found, there are a variety of them that are sold online. We also have physical copies here if you are.
And then last but not least will be the collection of the full collection of Joma's work, which I'm working on now. We will be publishing on the legal democratic movement and on the revolutionary mass work and movement next month, and it will be followed by 20 more topical collections of his works.
Yes, very good. That's actually a great segue to the next section of this webinar.
So we hope to publish everything by the second half of 2024.
Okay, yes, we've got a full docket, which is great. Someone in the chat suggested for someone, who would do this, make a Joma for beginners in addition to what they have for like Marx for beginners, Mao for beginners. That's an idea.
Of course, that's an idea. So everyone among you now can be very creative and create the books.
This is our job now.
It's your job.
It's true. Got it.
And Joma for children.
Yeah. Oh my God. Actually. Okay. Wait. Let's someone jot this down. Okay. So now that we have received those questions and suggestions, we want to extend the invitation to some of the events that Ka Julie already mentioned, which is events around the 50th anniversary of the founding of the National Democratic Front of the Philippines. So we have a day of commemoration for revolutionary martyrs on April 15th, and a 2-day anniversary conference on April 22nd and 23rd. There's going to be cultural workshops, panels, speakers, a declaration of unity with other revolutionary liberation movements, and Solidarity Night. So we will be launching also during April 22nd 3 more books, and please follow our social media accounts to keep up to date with those events and how you can join us. If you actually scan the QR code, you will see the links to our social media accounts so you can follow us. And also, if you are here in person, there will be a celebration for Joma's birthday on February 8th in this same place, so you can just come back next week or in a few days.
February 8th. We will have food and drinks. We'll have food and drinks.
Yes, it'll be a nice birthday celebration. So before we get to our last few videos, which is a cultural from the US and also a playing of Pulang Saludo or Red Salute to Ka Joma, we do want, hopefully, to take a photo. We would like to invite everyone who is here or everyone who's comfortable to actually join us at the front, and we will switch the camera around.
After the cultural.
Oh, we're doing it after the cultural.
That's what you said.
Okay. All right. Anyway, never mind. Let's go to the videos so that we can give everyone time here to come and arrange themselves, and also for our tech, I guess, to give everyone a chance to open their videos. So please open your videos, your cameras, if you can. Let's play.
sa aking pag-alis, kayo hindi rin mawawalan. Lipon anak, sa inyong laging nadarahan, katulad ko rin, mabubuting anak ng bayan. Pagpati ko sa inyo, ihati nila'y silang anak no rin at kasama, kasabay ng mananiti, sasabihin nila'y inay, itay, kumusta na?
Pulang saludo Ka Joma, bayani ng Pilipino, tulad ni Andres Bonifacio at Crisanto Evangelista. Salamat sa pag-aalay ng buhay, talino, tapang at tatag, sa pagsusulong ng revolusyon ng proletaryado at bayan. Pulang saludo Ka Joma, sa dakila mong gawa. Pulang saludo Ka Joma, mabuhay ka, mabuhay ka. Pulang saludo Ka Joma, sa pabrika, bukid, pinahan, eskwela, tanggapan, sanman, mga akda mo ay liwanag, baka ay sandata para sa bagong demokrasya, hanggang sosyalismo'y maabot at mapaunlad ng lubos. Pulang saludo Ka Joma, sa dakila mong gawa. Pulang saludo Ka Joma, mabuhay ka, mabuhay ka. Magkaisa't itaas ang kamao, bandilang kulay, iwagayway, ang pakikipakan ng sambayanan, isulong at ipagtagumpay. Tagapag-organisa ng kabataan, mga manggagawa't magsasaka, mandirigmang minamahal, inikot mo mga kapatagan, kabundukan at kagubatan, tinawid mga ilog at dagat, upang ilunsad digmang bayan. Pulang saludo Ka Joma, sa dakila mong gawa. Pulang saludo Ka Joma, mabuhay ka, mabuhay ka. Angkon ng hirap at panganib, kumilos ka laban sa kaaway, labis man ang init ng araw, labis man ang lakas ng ulos. Kasamang ka sa hukbong bayan, sa pagsasanay, pagmatag, pagkampo, pagkukob at pagsalakay. Pulang saludo Ka Joma, pulang saludo Ka Joma, sa dakila mong gawa. Pulang saludo Ka Joma, mabuhay ka, mabuhay ka.
sa panganib ng kamatayan, sa pagdanas ng pahirap ng mga papet na pasista at mismong mga imperialista. Maningning ang iyong mga halimbawa sa bayat sandaigdigan. Kulang saludo Ka Joma sa dakila mong gawa. Kulang saludo Ka Joma, mabuhay ka, mabuhay ka. Salamat sa iyong paglaban at mga ambag sa pagsulong ng ating revolusyon sa bayat sandaigdigan. Kulang saludo Ka Joma, mayaman ang iyong pamana sa mga susunod na salinlahi. Ka Joma, mabuhay kang lagi. Kulang saludo Ka Joma sa dakila mong gawa. Kulang saludo Ka Joma, mabuhay ka, mabuhay ka.
Okay, hello everyone. You will notice that the tech has been trying to promote all of you to panelists, so you will have to accept that, and then also you can turn on your camera and join us for a group photo. We'll take a screenshot. We will reconvene everyone here to join us for this camera, and I'll again do a chant. As one last thing, I think maybe you may have noticed this today, but this has been a very youth-driven program, from our MCs to our behind the scenes to our reactors and our reviewers, which only goes to show that not only is the Philippine Democratic Revolution invincible, but it's inevitable, because we will continue it as the youth in the next generation. Thank you everyone for joining us, for turning on your cameras, for chanting Ka Joma Lives with us, for learning about these books. And yes, please remember to continue Ka Joma's legacy by continuing your commitment to the Filipino People's Democratic Revolution, and also for your solidarity to it, whoever you may be. Yes!
Ka Joma lives! Ka Joma lives! Ka Joma lives!